I was sitting at a corner table at Brennan's Coffee on Oak Street, the same table I'd been coming to every Monday morning for 11 years. It's a habit I never planned. After my wife passed, I needed somewhere to go that wasn't the house. The house was too quiet. Still is, some mornings. So I drive the 12 minutes to Brennan's, order a black coffee and a blueberry muffin I never finish, and sit by the window with the photo. Always the same photo. It's a 4x6 print, laminated because I'd handled it so many times the corners were going soft. My son at 2.5 years old, sitting on the back porch steps in our house in Columbus, Ohio. He's wearing a red and white striped shirt my wife had bought at the yard sale. He's got both arms wrapped around our dog, a beagle named Hector, and he's laughing at something off camera. His eyes are squinted, almost shut when he laughs. He got that from his mother. I've looked at that photo so many times I stopped seeing it the way other people would. I don't see a cute kid. I see the last morning everything was normal. He disappeared 3 days after that photo was taken. His name was Curtis. He was 3 years old when he went missing from our backyard on a Tuesday afternoon in September of 1988. I was at work. My wife had stepped inside to answer the phone. She still blamed herself for that every day until the day she died. When she came back outside 4 minutes later, the gate was open and Curtis was gone. The police searched. The FBI came. Our neighborhood was covered in flyers. Local news ran the story for 2 weeks. Then a bigger story came along and we weren't on the news anymore. But I kept looking. I hired private investigators 3 separate times over the years. I joined a missing children's network in 1994. I never stopped. My wife Helen stopped hoping around the time Curtis would have turned 15. Not out loud. She never said it to me directly. But I could see it in the way she'd look at the flyers I still printed. The way she'd go quiet when the anniversary came around each September. She loved our son completely. She just couldn't survive on hope the way I could. She had a different kind of grief, and I didn't know how to help her carry it. Helen passed in 2019. Heart failure. The doctor told me it was genetic, not caused by anything external. I know that's true medically. I also know that spending 31 years waiting for news that never comes does something to a person's heart that doesn't show up in any scan. I kept the photo on the table every Monday morning. Just me and the laminated picture and a coffee I'd nursed for 2 hours. That's what I was doing the morning everything changed. It was a Monday in late October. I remember because the decorative pumpkins were out on the sidewalk in front of Brennan's and I'd almost knocked one over coming through the door. The place was about half full, mostly regulars. I recognized by face a couple of college students from Ohio State with laptops. I was on my second cup when a man sat down across from me. He didn't ask. He just pulled out the chair and sat. I looked up. He was somewhere in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Light brown hair going gray at the temples. Medium build. He was wearing a plain navy jacket and there was something quiet about the way he moved. Not nervous exactly, but deliberate, like someone who'd rehearsed getting to this moment many times, but was still managing the fear of it. He looked at the photo on the table. Then he looked at me. "You still come here every week," he said. It wasn't a question. I felt the back of my neck go cold. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" He didn't answer that. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set a folded piece of paper on the table between us. "I've been watching this place for 3 weeks," he said. "I almost came in twice before." I kept walking. "Who are you?" I said. He looked at the photo again, then at me. And something in his face shifted. Not quite breaking, but loosening, the way a person looks when they've been holding something together for a very long time and they're finally letting themselves set it down. "I think you might be my father," he said. I want to be honest about what happened in my body when he said those words, because it wasn't what you might expect. It wasn't relief. It wasn't joy. It was something closer to freefall, that half second when your stomach drops before you understand whether you're falling from something terrible or something extraordinary. I sat very still. I looked at him the way you look at a face when you're trying to find something familiar in it. His eyes, they squinted slightly even when he wasn't smiling. Same as the boy in the photo. Same as Helen. I made myself breathe. "What's your name?" I asked. "I go by Devin," he said. "Devin Marsh. But I don't think that's the name I was born with." Curtis, I said. The name came out in almost no sound at all. Your name was Curtis. He nodded slowly. I know. I've known for about 8 months. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I asked him how. He told me he'd been doing a DNA ancestry test, the kind you send off in a kit, something his wife had bought him for his birthday as a gift, mostly as a joke. They'd done it together, expected to find out he was mostly Irish with some Scandinavian. The typical Midwest result. What came back instead was a list of close DNA matches he didn't recognize. A second cousin in Michigan. A woman in Pennsylvania the database flagged as a likely half-sibling. He'd told himself it was an error. Then he'd gotten curious. He hired a genealogist for $400, who spent 6 weeks tracing the matches. The genealogist came back with a name. Curtis Hamill. Missing child. Columbus, Ohio. 1988. I sat in my car in a parking garage for 45 minutes after I read that, Devin said. I couldn't go back into the office. I just sat there. I understood that feeling more than I could say. I asked him how he'd found me, found this specific coffee shop, this specific table. He said the genealogist had found my name in connection with the case. From there it wasn't hard. I'm in the phone book, still one of the last people in Columbus, probably. He'd driven past my house. Found out from a neighbor I came to Brennan's every Monday, 3 weeks of working up the nerve. I looked at the photo on the table. The little boy in the striped shirt, arms around Hector. There's a dog in that photo, I said. Do you remember the dog? He looked down at the photo for a long moment. He slept in the bottom step of the porch, he said quietly. He smelled like grass. I used to sit with him in the mornings. I put my hand over my mouth. Devin looked up. I don't have a lot of memories from before. They're more like feelings attached to images, warm concrete. A red shirt that was scratchy at the collar. A woman's voice singing something I've never been able to identify. He paused, but the dog, I remembered the dog. We sat at that table for almost 3 hours. I told him things I'd never said to another person outside of an FBI interview room. What the morning he disappeared was like. What the weeks after were like. What his mother was like, and how long she'd waited. And how I wished with everything in me that she'd lived to sit at this table. When I told him Helen had passed, something moved through his face, a grief for a person he didn't remember, which might be the saddest kind of grief there is. He told me what he knew about his own history, which wasn't much and was mostly wrong until recently. He'd been raised by a couple in a small town in Indiana, Martinsville, about an hour south of Indianapolis. He called them his parents because they were the only parents he'd known, and both of them had passed by the time he was 30. They told him he was adopted. They told him his birth parents had given him up voluntarily because they couldn't afford to keep him. They told him there were no records. All of it was a lie. He didn't know who they'd gotten him from or how much they paid. He didn't know whether they'd known the full story of where he came from. He'd found some papers after his adoptive mother died in name, an agency that turned out not to be a real agency, a P.O. box in Kentucky that had been closed for 20 years. The genealogist thought someone had been running a black market adoption operation in the late 80s. Whether his adoptive parents knew the child they were buying had been taken from a family, he couldn't say for certain. I didn't press that. Whatever they knew or didn't know, they were gone now. And Devin had loved them. That was complicated enough without me making it worse. I asked him about his life. He was married to a woman named Dale, 2 kids, a daughter 11 and a son 8. He worked in logistics management for a regional trucking company. He'd lived in the same house in Greenwood, Indiana for 9 years. A whole life. A full, real, ordinary life. 36 years in the making, in a place I never would have looked, because I had no reason to look there. We agreed to do a DNA test, not because either of us doubted it. By then the dog's sleeping spot settled it for me in some way. No lab could improve on, but because I'd learned over 30 years that you document everything. Devin said the same thing. He was methodical that way. I liked that about him immediately. The results came back 3 weeks later, 99.998% probability of a father-son relationship. I printed the results and put them in the same drawer where I keep Helen's photo albums. I don't know exactly why. It felt right. I want to tell you what happened next with the honesty it deserves. Because it would be easy to tell you a simple story here. 2 people find each other after a lifetime apart. Thanksgiving, Christmas, everyone crying at the dinner table in the good way. That's the story you want, and part of it is true. But there's a harder part too, and I owe it to both of us to tell that part. About 2 months after the DNA results came back, I was driving out to Greenwood on a Saturday to meet Devin and Gail and the kids for the first time. My granddaughter, that word felt impossible and real at the same time, had apparently told her teacher at school that her grandfather was coming to visit. The teacher had sent a note home that said she'd been talking about it all week. I had to pull over on I-70 for a few minutes. Then I got back on the highway and kept driving. When I got to the house and rang the doorbell, the door swung open, and my grandson was standing there with a gap where his 2 front teeth should be, wearing a Columbus Blue Jackets t-shirt. Devin had apparently mentioned I was a fan, and he said, very seriously, "Are you really him?" I said I thought I really was. He stepped aside and let me in. Over the following months, Devin and I talked about the question I'd been carrying since the day at Brennan's. He hadn't gone to law enforcement about the adoption records. I asked him whether he wanted to. He thought about it for a long time before he answered. He said yes. Not for revenge. He used that word specifically, said revenge wasn't what this was about. He said he wanted a record. He wanted it documented, officially, that he had been taken from his family and sold. Not for his sake only, because if it had happened to him, it had happened to other children. And some of those children might still be out there looking for what he'd spent 36 years not knowing he was missing. We contacted the FBI field office together. An agent named Crawford came to my house on a Thursday afternoon and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and spent 4 hours going over everything Devin had pieced together. Crawford told us at the outset that prosecutions for something this old would be very difficult. The people most directly responsible were likely dead. The evidence was fragmentary. But he said they would look. What they found over the following year was a network that had operated across Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky through most of the 1980s, connected to 3 other missing persons cases, 2 of which had been closed as runaways, 1 still technically open. The man who had run it had died in 2003. His associate was in a nursing home in Lexington with advanced dementia. There would be no trial. Devin sat with that for a while. I sat with it too. He told me one evening we were on the back porch of my house with 2 beers and the kind of quiet that's become comfortable between us, that he'd expected to feel cheated by that outcome. No courtroom, no confrontation, no moment where someone looked him in the eyes and admitted what they'd done to him and our family. But I don't actually feel cheated, he said. I think I feel something else. I asked him what. He thought about it. Finished, he said, like a door closed that was always standing open. I understood that. I spent 36 years standing in that open doorway. You forget, after a while, that you're cold. I have been asked, since this came out among people who know me, how I feel about the people who took him, about the couple who raised him, about the years, about everything that was stolen. I'll tell you what I told them. I am angry. I will always be angry. There is a 36-year hole in my life, and in my son's life, and Helen never got to see this, and that hole doesn't close just because the door does. The anger is real, and it belongs there. And I don't think I should have to apologize for it, or manage it into something more comfortable for other people. But I'm also 71 years old. I have a son who has a wife named Gail who makes the best lemon cake I've ever eaten in my life. I have a granddaughter who calls me Grandpa Howard with a particular kind of emphasis that 11-year-olds put on names, like they're trying out how it sounds. I have a grandson who corrected my pronunciation of a hockey player's name at Thanksgiving and was absolutely right. I have Monday mornings. Different now. Devin calls me on Monday mornings. His commute runs about 20 minutes and he calls me when he gets on the highway. We talk about nothing in particular. Hockey, his daughter's volleyball, whether the house needs the gutters cleaned before winter. The kind of conversation that accumulates into a life between 2 people. The laminated photo is still in my jacket pocket. I don't take it out of Brennan's anymore. I don't need to look at it to hold on to him. He's not missing. He's on the highway somewhere outside Indianapolis, about to call me, but I keep the photo. I'll keep it the rest of my life. Helen's voice singing the thing Devin said he remembered as a feeling without a name. I recognized it when he hummed a few bars of it one Sunday at the house. She used to sing it when she hung laundry on the line. An old Patsy Cline song. She didn't know all the words, so she'd hum the parts she'd forgotten. I told Devin what it was. He was quiet for a moment. Then he took out his phone and pulled up the song, and we sat at the kitchen table and listened to it all the way through. Neither of us said anything after it ended. We didn't need to. I've thought a lot about what kept me going for 36 years when most people, reasonable people, people who love me, had quietly accepted that it was over. Helen never said it was over. But I could see it in her. And I don't blame her. Hope is not a sustainable fuel for everyone, and she carried her grief the only way she knew how. What kept me going wasn't hope exactly. It was something harder and less comfortable than hope. It was the refusal to let the last true thing about my son be that he vanished. That felt like a lie I wasn't willing to live with. So I kept the photo. I kept the Monday mornings. I kept showing up. And here's what I've come to believe. Not because anyone taught it to me, but because I've lived long enough to watch it play out. The things you do consistently, without applause, without any evidence they're working, those things accumulate. They don't disappear. Devin found me because I was findable. I was findable because I never stopped being the father of a missing son. Publicly, persistently, in the same corner table every single Monday for 11 years. That's not magic. That's just what staying looks like over a long period of time. There's something about integrity that works the same way. Not integrity as a performance, not the kind where you make sure people see you doing the right thing. The other kind. The kind where you do it when no one's watching and there's no reward coming. I kept that photo out every Monday in a coffee shop where nobody knew what it meant. That was just for me, for Curtis, for Helen. And somehow, it was exactly the thing that brought my son home. I think about the couple who raised Devin and what they did, and I feel the anger I've always felt. I'm not going to dress it up. But I also think about what Devin became: methodical, decent, a good father, a man who spent 3 weeks in a parking lot across the street working up the nerve to do a hard thing the right way instead of the easy way. Whatever was done to him, whatever lies he was raised inside of, he still chose carefully. He still showed up with his hands open instead of clenched. That took something. That took a kind of intelligence that has nothing to do with education. The intelligence of knowing which things are worth being afraid of and doing them anyway. I'm 71. I don't have the energy anymore to carry anger as a primary occupation. What I have instead is a Monday morning phone call, a grandson who corrects my hockey knowledge, a granddaughter who says my name like she's been saying it her whole life. I have Gail's lemon cake. I have the sound of a Patsy Cline song that used to belong only to memory and now belongs to a kitchen table where 2 people sat and let it fill the room. None of that came from waiting for the world to fix what it broke. It came from deciding over and over in small, unremarkable ways that I wasn't finished. That's the only thing I know how to pass on. Not a lesson, just the evidence of one life. You stay honest, you stay present, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the thing you stayed for walks through the door. Curtis walked through mine. 36 years late. Right on time.